The NHL's first attempt at the Frozen Frenzy was a big success. 16 games, all kinds of goals, lots of great action. We'll recap everything coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we had our very first Frozen Frenzy yesterday. Tuesday brought us 16 games, all 32 teams in action with a staggered schedule. First time the NHL has tried this, and it was honestly a thing of beauty. There was, I think, around 100 goals scored, all kinds of great action. Average game featured about 6.5 goals. It's just a really fun day, and I hope the NHL decides to put forth these types of games, game days in the future with a staggered schedule. It was nice to be able to kind of bounce around on the TV, get different games during intermissions, and you don't always have that option. A lot of times you have all the games in the same intermission at one time. Sometimes we get 5-6 games and they all have a 7 o'clock Eastern start or something. And, you know, I understand from a logistics standpoint that might be challenging to do, but this was a fun day, and I hope the NHL sees how successful it was and does it in the future. We got things kicked off with the Leafs and the Capitals. The Maple Leafs pick up a 4-1 victory. The Capitals lose another game, looking again more and more likely that they might be heading for the draft lottery, which I know not a lot of people predicted this year. I thought they would definitely take a step back. I didn't think they'd be quite so poorly, though, out of the gate. Ovechkin finally gets on the board with his first goal of the season. Going to be really curious to see how this impacts Ovi. I mean, obviously, Ovi's not necessarily completely exempt to the lack of success there in the Capitals organization this year. We've seen some players have big years on bad teams. So far, that's not happening. And I'm just curious to see how he rebounds. Will it pick up? Will he have a fairly normal OV season, or are we finally going to see a drop-off that a lot of people have been waiting for years and it's just never come? We had goals on a lot of the big boys in Toronto from Riley, Tavares, Matthews, and Nylander. Joseph Wall was terrific in net, only allowing the one goal, picking up the victory. And Wall has been quietly one of the better goalies in the NHL in his limited starts here so far. I can certainly see a scenario coming where he does steal the net from Samsonov and become the starter before not too long here with the Leafs into the season. The Ottawa Senators dropped their second straight home game, this time to another division rival, the Buffalo Sabres, 6-4. Of course, they honored Craig Anderson prior to the game. Anderson has signed a one-day contract and retired as a Senator. Did a nice ceremonial puck drop with the goalies doing the face-off, which was kind of fun and different and interesting all at the same time. So it was Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen against Anton Forsberg. So it was kind of just a fun gesture there with the goalie being honored last night. The Sens had an incredibly poor start to the game. The Sabres got a couple of the goals they got were a little bit lucky, but they certainly were outplaying Ottawa in a sense that they were capitalizing on their chances more. Forsberg wasn't necessarily bad, but he certainly wasn't great either. Before you knew it, it was like later in the game, it was 5-1 for Buffalo. You saw fire DJ chants in the Ottawa crowd. The Sens seem to be playing for stretches at least, not the entire game. A little bit of what I'd call uninspired hockey. I think a few times they were trying to be a little bit too fancy and passing up shots for different angles, not working out. The defense was not good enough, not boxing out, giving the Sabres too much traffic in front of the net. A couple of goals, like I said, Forsberg, either combination, the pucks were tipped or they couldn't see. It was kind of a weird one. They did put up a late rally to make it interesting, came all the way back to 5-4 before the Sabres added a very last second empty netter to make it 6-4. Skinner had a couple goals for the Sabres, so did Thompson. The Senators ended up with a big fight near the end. Brady Tkachuk fought Alex Tuch and absolutely destroyed him. Tuch's face looks pretty mangled today, and on post-game interviews, it was all really black and blue and bloodied. Tuch and Tkachuk had gone at each other numerous times through that game. It was something that was kind of building, and right before Tkachuk challenged him to a fight, he kind of gave him a little bit of a dirty hit. It wasn't a real aggressive one, but it was just kind of like a shimmer type thing to knock him off his feet. And Tkachuk had enough at that point between the score and everything that had happened throughout the game. And he said, let's go, and he destroyed him. Now, Tkachuk was given an instigator penalty, and normally in the last 5 minutes of the game when this took place, that would lead to an automatic one-game suspension. The NHL has confirmed that's not going to be the case because they didn't feel that it was really an instigator situation in the truest sense of the rule. The rule is put in place to make sure that a team that's losing essentially doesn't turn the last 5 minutes into just a big muck fest and turn into a whole bunch of fights and kind of get everything way off track. And that didn't happen at all. This was a case of, like Evander Kane said in the playoffs last year, F around and find out. Well, Tuck effed around with Tkachuk, and he found out. And it was just that simple. He kept egging him on, dirty little hit there, and Tkachuk plowed him. Essentially is what happened. And, I didn't feel it was an instigator. The other thing that I didn't think was an instigator was that they both were willing combatants. Sometimes you see one guy doesn't want to fight. Well, Tuck dropped his gloves pretty quick and was willing, so I don't see how that was the case. But the NHL has confirmed that that's not going to lead to a suspension or a fine for the coach, which is also normal procedure as well, which is good news for Ottawa. They have already lost 2 straight. They're without one of their top defensemen. Like I said, had a couple of bad games in a row. They lose their captain as well. That would just kind of spiral things into being a worse mess. It was, it wasn't the greatest, most fun game to watch just because it was one-sided for a big chunk of it. By the time it was interesting, it was almost too late. Sens power play is not clicking at a good enough rate either. And they need to make some changes. They need to get Pinto in the lineup is what they need to do. They need to get everything sorted out. That's becoming a distraction. You could see they showed up in the press box. Michael Andlauer and Steve Staios talking, and Pierre Dorion sitting there with his eyes kind of bugging out of his head. Like, he looks nervous, in my opinion, and maybe he should be. We'll see how much patience they have before they make changes in the front office or behind the bench with this team who had a good start but suddenly find themselves struggling. We saw the Lightning shut out the Hurricanes. That was a little bit of a surprise, but the Hurricanes have been on a nightmare road trip, not picking up a lot of wins and a lot of points, which is also quite surprising. But Jonas Johansson gets the job done against a Canes team that's not been playing well and has a few injuries that it's been battling as well. Point, Barré-Boulet, and Nick Paul scored the goals for the Lightning, and they get the shutout victory over normally a pretty tough opponent. The Devils over the Habs 5-2. It's always fun to see Jack Hughes battle Cole Caulfield, of course, the longtime friends and former teammates with the United States national team program. Obviously, both having a lot of success at the NHL. Certainly, Hughes is become one of the game's top point producers, and Caulfield one of the top young goal scorers. Toffoli had a hat trick in this one. Jack Hughes put up another impressive performance at the Bell Center, putting up 4 assists. This was Caden Primo's first game of the season, and unfortunately, not a great result. I'm not sure you can blame the goaltending here on everything. Obviously, they get a high-powered Devils team against a battered and not so great defensively Habs team. So, but an overall great performance from a few of the Devils players there. Especially the Panthers picked up a much-needed win over a weak San Jose team, 3-1 for the Panthers. No Barkov, no problem on this night. Verhaeghe and Reinhart scored. That's 7 goals now for Reinhart on the season. He's an absolute tear. Reminder, he's also playing for a contract. I'm not saying that that's the only reason. He's a talented kid, talented player. Not really much a kid anymore. It feels like it, though, since obviously some of these guys I've been watching them, obviously, since they were so young. It's hard to imagine how old some of these guys really are when you've been a long-time fan like myself. But obviously, Reinhardt's on a tear, and he's looking for some money on his next deal, no doubt. Anthony Stolarz picked up his first win of the season as well for the Panthers. They saw a high-scoring affair, which is a little bit surprising when you involve the New York Islanders, but the Avalanche wins 7-4 over Long Island. Not a huge shocker. We see the Avalanche be a high-powered team, but even a team like the Islanders tend to be pretty stingy. Johansson had a couple goals. Rantanen had 4 points for the Avalanche. I know Anders Lee had a goal for the Islanders. Makar had 3 points. It's just too much for the Islanders. Early on, it was kind of back and forth, and then eventually the Avalanche took over, and the Islanders could just not shut them down. We saw a game last night, which I was hoping to see, the battle of the number 2 and 3 overall picks from the 23 draft. Unfortunately, that was not to be because Carlson wasn't in the lineup for the Ducks, but the Ducks did do battle with the Jackets, and they picked up a 3-2 overtime victory. Frankie Vetrano with the overtime winner. Adam Fantilli responded for the Jackets with his second of the year as well. He had some different development plans going on with Carlson there in Anaheim. I'm not really sure. I'll be curious to see how this all works out. He's not going to be playing more than 2 games a week for at least the first few months of the season. The Winnipeg Jets picked up a much-needed win as well over the St. Louis Blues, 4-2. Kyle Connor picks up the victory there. Connor Hellebuyck between the pipes for the Winnipeg Jets. The Dallas Stars have a 4-1 win over Pittsburgh. I know the Penguins' top players seem to be having a lot of frustration built in over their lack of success. I'd be curious to see what adjustments they make and where things go. As I mentioned in last night's news and rumor video, Kyle Dubas is scouring the market, looking to make upgrades for the supporting cast around the big boys, looking at the bottom 6 forwards and the third pair of the defense, looking to see if they can shake things up. Obviously, they have a number of positions there. They brought in some players that just haven't worked out, and they're looking to see if they can make some changes. But the Penguins not having a great start here. Wyatt Johnson, Jason Robertson, some of the goal scorers for the Stars. Brian Rust picked up the goal for the Penguins. The Kraken and Red Wings put on a good show. 5-4 Seattle in overtime. So Detroit finally loses, although they still managed to get a point. The Red Wings scored another 3 straight power play goals. It was looking like early in the third that the Kraken might take this in regulation and by a couple of goals, but then they get into penalty trouble, and that crazy Detroit power play that is at a ridiculously high clip right now scored 3 straight goals to give them the lead. Then the Kraken came back to tie it, sent it to overtime. Jordan Eberle scored the winner. Of course, Larkin and DeBrincat all over the score sheet again. What a crazy start for Detroit. Even though they lose, they get a point. Seattle gets a much-needed 2 points after not a great start on their behalf. The Bruins get a shutout over Chicago. Swayman between the pipes for that one. Connor Bedard scored a beauty goal. Did the vintage Patrick Kane Selly afterwards to get the Chicago crowd going. Unfortunately, it was called back due to an offside challenge. Sometimes the offside challenge just is annoying because sometimes it takes so long. It can really change the momentum of the game. Zaka, Matthew Poitras, and Trent Frederick scored the goals for the Bruins. The Minnesota Wild scored a 7-4 victory over the Oilers minus Connor McDavid, the first game without their captain, and it was a defensive nightmare. They still managed to put up 4 goals without McDavid, which is actually pretty good, and on a lot of nights should be enough to win. You should be able to grab a 4-3, 4-2 victory or something like that, but not on a team like this. It was an absolutely defensive nightmare. Campbell allowed 6. The final goal was the empty netter. They're not getting good goaltending. The defense is a mess. I don't care how much they can score. This team has trouble, and is it early to hit the panic button? Probably, but I tell you, it's going to get, like I said before, it's going to feel late really fast because, like I said, you can't win the cup early in the season, but if your October, November is that atrocious, you might not even get in the playoffs, or if you do, you're going to get in a really low seed, and then you're going to be playing Colorado and Vegas at home early, and that's just a nightmare. You don't want that. So I feel bad for the Oilers. Things are not working out like we expected at all. The Canucks with a 3-2 victory over the Nashville Predators. Ilya Mikheyev gets his first goal of the season for Vancouver. Thatcher Demko was good, but only faced 17 shots, gave up 2 goals, made 15 saves. So the Predators struggling to generate a lot of shot attempts on the Canucks netminder. The Rangers beat the Flames 3-1. Lafreniere, Kreider, and Eric Gustafsson scored the goals for the New York Rangers. Coleman responded for the Calgary Flames. The Flames with another loss there. That's certainly not a great start to their season either. The Rangers have been kind of hot and cold too, so certainly nice to see them get a victory. LA scored a 6-3 win over the Coyotes, who up until this point actually have been getting some pretty good goaltending. Goaltending had a little bit of a letdown in this one. The Kings actually had 6 different goal scorers. Even though you saw 6 goals, sometimes you see some of the top players rack up a bunch of points, and it really wasn't the case. I don't think anybody had more than 2 points, 6 different goal scorers. It was really spread out. A lot of different people contributing last night for Los Angeles. Phoenix Copley was between the pipes to get the victory. In the final game of the night, saw the Vegas Golden Knights doing battle with the Philadelphia Flyers, and they remain undefeated, going to 7-0, just like the Boston Bruins and the Colorado Avalanche. The Flyers lose this one, but a good, really gutsy effort against a really, really good team. Ivan Barbashev, Shea Theodore, and Paul Cotter, who scored an absolutely beautiful dangle goal. Cotter is not somebody you'd expect to make a move like that, but it was insanely nice. Cam Atkinson, Noah Cates respond for the Philadelphia Flyers. Logan Thompson between the pipes for the Vegas Golden Knights, who start season number 7-7-0. Some of these teams, you're wondering, are they ever gonna lose? It's eventually it'll happen, but how long will these teams be able to go? It was a fun day. That's all your recap action, all kinds of other things coming down the pipe here that we expect to be talking about later today, so stay tuned. There'll be another video, if not maybe even more than one on the channel today, with all kinds of other news and rumors from around the NHL. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. You get all your news here and game reviews, everything on one spot at Top Shelf Hockey. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.